Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome. Dana, how you doing?
I'm doing fine. I was just trying to think of something, and I didn't realize that we were starting. So I think that my first expression today is going to be like, "Wow, we're going."
We're just sitting up here waiting, to go live while we're sitting here. We're talking. She was filming me, and she just watched, because it is time to moisturize.
To moisturize.
To moisturize, especially when winter comes and you start running the heater. You notice that? You need to moisturize.
Yes.
You
I gotta
moisturize?
I moisturize.
You moisturize? She was saying.
Maybe they don't remember. We should probably tell them. So, like the very first Sunday that we did this, and we were talking about washing your hands all the time because that was like the big. I mean, it still is the big thing. You should still wash your hands. But then you quoted a movie, and I love movie quotes, and so I had to guess, and it was Ocean's 11. And then just over the last couple weeks, I actually watched all 3 of them.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
I know. So
Right?
they're really fun.
What's
so
your
I was
favorite
telling him.
of them if you just watched them?
Probably Ocean's 11 because it's
The first
classic.
one?
Yeah. Have you
Yeah.
seen the real one, like with the Rat Pack or whatever they're called?
Yes, it was
Yeah.
kind of slow.
Yeah, it was. I got halfway
Did
through it.
you
I had
watch
to
that
stop.
one?
Yeah, I had to stop though. I got kind of bored.
I think we bought like the $5.99 DVD
Yeah,
pack
yeah.
from like Target. When they have those
Yes.
things for sale, and you're just
Right.
like you weren't thinking of buying it, and of course it jumps in your cart because
I don't know how that happens.
It's like 3 discs of
No,
all.
it's
the
only
Ocean's
$5.99.
11.
I have to
And
get
then
it.
there's 8 now, and isn't there like the women's one, and there's all kinds. Isn't there a
Oh,
girl
there
one?
was one with like Sandra Bullock or something. Yeah.
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 And all
Anyway,
the
that
ladies.
just happened right before we were starting, so I was trying to think of that. And
Yeah, so that's why you had that look on your face, huh?
yes.
Because and the rain too probably makes you like I know it makes me a little like
I
because
really
you know how
like
much I
the rain.
love rain.
I know, but that's how we're different. I genuinely like the rain.
I think I'm speechless. You like the rain.
I genuinely, like I lay in bed and I'm like, oh, I
when it
love-
rains and it like when you're laying in bed and it's just like pouring rain.
Yeah. I always am sad if I didn't wake up for it. Like I want to wake up
Really?
and hear it. Yeah. Yeah.
I try to do everything to avoid the rain. I did a little project this weekend too to get away from the rain. 'Cause you know
Before
how
the
much-
rain or during the rain?
Before the rain.
Oh, that was good because there was a big rain.
I know. I was running out of time.
Yeah.
Well, we were painting the house too, and I had to like finish some of that stuff
Good
before
timing.
rain comes because you don't really want to paint outside in the rain.
No, I hear
right?
it doesn't.
But anyway, that's
very
another
well.
story. So, yeah, usually when it rains, it just I don't know because I feel like stuff's getting wet outside.
Yeah.
Right? Did you put your cushions away?
Stuff
Speaking of?
does get wet when it rains. No,
All
we
your
didn't.
outdoor
We
cushions?
just leave them out there. I'm
You
telling
leave your outdoor
We just leave
cushions?
them out there because then the
That
day
is gross.
No, we have really outdoorsy outdoor
Oh.
cushions, so it's okay. Nothing happens to them. I'm telling you, they're like
they
nothing happens.
Wood?
No,
What?
no, they're like.
They're gonna be
Cushions.
soaked. That's
Well, yeah, but you don't sit on them
just
then.
saying. I
You
think
just-
I'm gross because I don't wash my coffee cup out. That's like just
I'm not eating off
leave
of
them
them.
out all year long. Okay.
Okay, so tell us about your project.
Okay, the project. So underneath, we have a porch out back in a daylight basement, and then I have a wood pile, a couple piles stacked out there.
Yeah.
And like my wood's always been, it's like underneath the deck, but it always like rains and gets all soaking wet, right? So I
Right.
just had like tarps over it, and it's always like
Right.
been bugging me. And then if it's raining, you go out to make a fire, and then I get grumpy when I get rained on. So the rain's coming down, it's like I gotta put a coat on, get the wood, fine, here, have the fire. I'm going to bed. It's like so. I
Right.
put a plastic corrugated roof
Yeah,
underneath,
yeah.
and I finished it up. So now it's like I walked out there, I tested it. I sat out there on a chair while it was
Oh,
raining,
what-
and it was dry.
And
It
did you
was so
enjoy
cool.
the rain while you were sitting out there?
It's
happening.
Maybe
It's happening. He's starting to
we
like
did have
it.
We did. My wife sleeps with the windows open all the time, like almost all
Nice.
year long. So
Yes.
on that first night, that was Friday night.
Yeah.
I finished up Friday. Just in time, and then Friday night, right? It just poured,
Yeah.
and I did. I woke up a couple of times and heard the rain. And I was like,
Yeah, so you're
I got
starting
you
to like it,
outsmarted.
though,
No, I didn't like
actually.
it. I just felt like I
Oh.
outsmarted the rain.
You will though. You just wait.
Okay.
Anyways.
we should do birthdays.
There's our weather report for the day.
There's our weather. That's all
And
we can
now,
talk
in
about.
other news, we have birthdays.
Give us some birthdays, Dana.
All right, we have birthdays. We have Jace Lanius. He turned 2,
Happy
which
birthday.
is so cute. Ruby Orman, happy
Aw, happy
birthday to
birthday.
you. Yeah, Henry Green, happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Olivia McCaskill, happy birthday.
birthday.
And, two Olivias. Olivia Hines, happy
Olivia Hines,
birthday.
happy
I love you. Happy birthday.
birthday.
15. That's great. Happy birthday.
Wow, what a special time.
Yes.
A few special little older kids. We won't mention how old these peeps are. But Joe Mazzancini had a birthday this week.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday. Jim Carroll, happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Lynn Smythe, happy birthday.
Yay.
And another special one, I won't mention what it was, but he had a special birthday. Dan Erickson.
He has 2 kids here representing him.
Yeah, we've got some youth kids that are going to be playing with us on the worship team. So his kids are here, but he's not. And Dan threw his back out. I don't know if it's just because he's getting old.
He probably talked to you, and then he threw his back out. Because everybody that's around you throws their back out.
That's kind of what happens.
Yikes.
My back's doing a little better, though.
Oh, so I'm glad to hear that. I should have asked. Sorry for not asking.
I haven't had a birthday, so that's why.
Oh, that's why. That's why.
So what else do we have today? What are we doing at the end of service?
We're doing communion. So get your stuff ready.
Yeah, if you're caught off guard a little bit right now, and you're like, oh, communion, right? Okay, just take a moment and go rummage through your refrigerator. Hopefully you've got some grape juice or maybe you can make Tang, grape Tang. Sorry, this is going downhill.
Yeah,
Matt's looking at me like he's giving me the ass sign right now. Like,
yeah, it's only holy. Don't worry about it.
Okay, hopefully you've got some grape juice or wine you can use.
We forgot something. We forgot a birthday.
That's right. That was the thing.
We forgot a birthday last week.
We forgot again.
And this is a big one. So if we forget yours, don't feel bad because we forgot a really big one last week.
We're getting so old, we forget all kinds of things. So we're so old, we forgot our church birthday last week.
You guys, that was our church birthday.
That was our
week.
9th birthday. Redemption Church has been around.
Can we get a round of applause here?
Yeah,
some cheers in the audience. Yay!
Our 9th birthday.
9 years ago, we had our first Sunday up at.
It must be like dog years then, because church years, maybe they're like dog years, because like we're really old if we forgot. Multiply that by like what, 10 or 7?
That's probably how it works. I'm pretty sure. I read that somewhere.
We can't forget next year when we're 10. We got to remember because 10 will be a big one. Double digits.
There will be less going on around though. So right?
Yes, we hope that. So anyway, happy birthday to Redemption Church.
And for all of you for joining us all this time.
If you've been
here,
here would be fun. If you're watching, you've been here for 10 years, just
or
say
9,
or we're
or
there
9.
on that first. Yeah. Whoa.
9
see,
years.
I going senile already. If you were there on that first Sunday that church opened at the high school for that very first service, tweet and say I was there. We'd love to know that. Just see who's
tweet
out there.
or make a comment
on the Facebook or
on the
YouTube.
Facebook or the YouTube.
Tweet. We're not on Twitter.
You can tweet
right now.
if you want to. That'd be cool. We don't have it, but do it.
Yeah. Okay.
I
think that's enough of Trent and Dana before.
We better get going.
Yeti mugs, Redemption mugs. Tune in next week. You might be able to win one.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun. Anyway, we're going to go into worship, and we got a special little video with some kids' message here to give us a little call to worship verse. Enjoy this, and then we're going to sing together.
John 3:16. For God so loved the world, the whole world, everyone, anyone, that's a lot of people,
that he gave his one and only Son.
His only Son, that whoever believes in him will not perish, but have eternal life. Wow.
Wow, that verse is awesome, especially when it's expressed by kids. And we're going to sing a song that has that verse in it. This is called God So Loved. Sing it with us. I know it's hard, maybe sometimes at home, but be encouraged. Sing along. Listen to us. Worship at home where you are. All right, here we go. All you weary, come all you thirsty, come to the well that never runs dry. Drink of the water, come and thirst no more. Yeah. Come all you sinners, come find his mercy, come to the table, he will satisfy. What you're looking for. Oh, for God so loved the world that he gave us his one and only my morning song. Though darkness fills the night, it cannot hide the light. Yes, whom shall I fear? You crush the enemy, oh, underneath my feet. You are my sword and shield, though troubles linger still. And whom shall I fear? I know who goes before me, I know who stands behind. Yes, the God of angel armies is always by my side. The one who reigns forever, he is a friend of mine. The God of angel armies is always by my side. Strength is in my name, for you alone can save. You will deliver me, yours is the victory. Yes, whom shall I fear? Oh, whom shall I fear? For I know who goes before me, I know who stands behind. Yes, the God of angel armies is always by my side. The one who reigns forever, he is a friend of mine. The God of angel armies is always by my side. Oh, and nothing formed against me shall stand. Oh, you hold the whole world in your hands. I'm holding on to your promises. You are faithful, you are faithful, yes. For nothing formed against me shall stand. Oh, you hold the whole world in your hands. I'm holding on to your promises. You are faithful, you are faithful, you are faithful, Lord. I know who goes before me, I know who stands behind. The God of angel armies is always by my side. The one who reigns forever, yes, he is a friend of mine. The God of angel armies is always by my side. I know who goes before me, I know who stands behind. The God of angel armies is always by my side. Yes, the one who reigns forever, he is a friend of mine. The God of angel armies is always by my side. Yeah. Oh, shall I fear? There's none to fear, Lord, for you are on my side. Oh, yeah. The God of angel armies, he's always by my side. Amen. At this point in our worship, you can, I don't know if you're standing and singing or just sitting in your seat or whatever, but I want you to just kind of take a moment and be able to reflect on God and his goodness. And we want to sing a new song I want to share with you. And I was super excited. This my son Caesar, actually, he turned me on to this album, a new album. It's an older group that's been around for a while. You know, Citizens are kind of a local band that's been around here. But they had this new album called The Joy of Being, and this song on there, too. Lots of amazing songs. I just say, if you're looking for good worship music that is creative and deep in all kinds of ways, check out that album, The Joy of Being. It is just incredibly good. And there's a song on here called Altogether Good. And this song just totally spoke to me. Actually, just the whole album, too. And I both of us, we were joking, we were talking with each other, and we were like, we were moved, we were in tears, we felt joy, we felt hope, we felt sorrow, kind of all these different things of emotion expressed to God. And as we're looking at this one song of Doing Two, it reminded me a lot of Psalm 42. You know, Psalm 42 is kind of that psalm that's as the deer pants for the water, so my soul longs for thee. And I love a little bit in there, too, a couple verses down in Psalm 42. It says, day and night my tears have been my food, while my enemies taunt me, saying, where is your God? I remember these things as I pour out my soul. And he remembers on how would I go into the crowd and lead them in a great procession to the house of God with loud shouts and songs of praise. I like that. Wow, that's kind of funny. Remember how we used to go to church and be able to go there and like sing together and glad shouts of praise, and we can't do that right now. Why are you so downcast? He said, but hope in God, for I shall praise him again, no matter what. And I just wanted to point out one little part in here, in this verse, and that's that section where he talks about, I remember these things as I pour out my heart. And I just want to encourage you, during this song, as we sing this, the words will be up there. Feel free to sing along or just listen to. But I want you to be able to pour out your heart to God, okay? And reflect on your life right now. Your life is all these ups and downs, crazy. Where are you right now? Where are you right now? And give that to God. So you might be feeling great. You might be feeling good. You might be feeling bad. You might be feeling weak. You might be feeling strong. You might be feeling sorrow. You might be feeling to joy. Whatever it is, go ahead and lean into that. That's okay. If you're like me, you probably have a hard time expressing your feelings or emotions. For me, a lot of times music and worship and stuff can help me do that. My brain doesn't process things. My wife always jokes with me too. You know, I'm not the best eloquent speaker. I feel like I always twist my words up. Even Dana and I are talking, and I say the dumbest things, or I twist a word around during worship or things like that. I try to talk, and it's like, oh, that's not what I meant to come out, right? But worship helps our heart express what our brain is thinking. And so whatever's happening in your life, I encourage you to lean into that and to trust him and to know that God is on our side. He is all together good, as this song says. Jesus, I thank you for your goodness in our lives. I pray you would help us to see that in whatever place we are in our lives. How could we recount the ways you have multiplied our faith? Wisdom of your ways, the currents of your grace expressed in every moment, every way. Oh, in the longing of our souls, in the darkness where we go, you are there, you are love, you are all together good. In the weakness of our faith, in the silence where we wait, you are there, you're enough, you are all together good. Yes, Lord. Through our joys and in our griefs, for you have led us to believe the wisdom of your ways, the currents of your grace express our only hope there. You are love. You are altogether good. In the weakness of our faith, in the silence where we wait, you are here. You're enough. You are altogether good. You are altogether good. Yes, Lord. I love you, Lord. I love you, Lord. You are my Lord. Holy, present, and pure. I love you, Lord. Oh, yeah. I love you, Lord. You are my Lord. Holy, present, and pure. Oh, in the longing of our souls, in the darkness where we go, you are there. You are love. You are altogether good. In the weakness of our faith, in the silence where we wait, you are here. Yes, you're enough. You are altogether good. I love you. Oh, I love you, Lord, oh, Lord. I love you, Lord. Oh, I love you, Lord. You are my Lord. You're my more than enough, oh God. Holy, present, and pure, Lord. I love you, Lord. I love you, Lord. Oh, I love you, Lord. You are my Lord. Holy, present, and pure, you are altogether good. Oh, Lord. Oh, so good, Lord. Yes, He is good.
Man, I am digging that music, trying to feel like it's a gunslinger kind of thing. It's very cool. I dig it. So, hey, welcome to a series that, frankly, I think is awful good. That's right. It's an awful good series. We are looking at the book of Ecclesiastes. Now, when we started this off 3 Sundays ago. That first Sunday, man, we were moving slow. It was a little bit like the 5:20 at rush hour pre-COVID. So we only made it like through 2 verses, right? That first week. And then last week, we sped up the pace. We were like kind of highway cruising at 55. But today, for all of you Spaceball fans, we are going ludicrous speed. We're going to go from chapter 1, verse 12 to chapter 2, verse 26. So we're going over a lot of stuff as fast as we can today. So kind of buckle up for that. Now, if you like, we have an app, and on the app, there are notes that you can follow along to. So if you're a digital personality, that's awesome. If you're more analog and you have a Bible that's actually made of paper and leather, you're so cool. And you can open up to Ecclesiastes chapter 1, because that's where we're going to kick off, and then we'll rock all the way through chapter 2. But before we do all of that, I want to go ahead and pray, get us ready for today, because we are charting a lot of territory that I find runs close to home, and I think it's always good for us to let Jesus settle our hearts. So let's go ahead and pray together. Jesus, I thank you for tremendous grace and love that you show us. And I thank you for the teacher of Ecclesiastes who kind of plots out a life course to find out where life holds up and where life doesn't hold up. And from that warns us to not put too much stock in the stuff of this world under the sun, because while in some ways it's fun, it's nice, it's good, it can't sustain us. It won't ultimately fulfill us and give us meaning and purpose. And so we really must look to other things, other places, another person, you, to really have that. And so I pray that that is what we learn today. And so Jesus, we thank you, we praise you, and we love you in your good and perfect name. Amen. Now, starting off this morning, of all the places we could start, I want to start off by looking at this man right here. Yes, Mr. Permagrin himself, happiest man on earth, Mr. Tony Robbins. Now, right now you're probably wondering, why are we showing Tony Robbins? Well, this is the man that our world says he can make all your wildest dreams come true. He can make you happy, fulfilled, give you purpose if you just listen to his message. And I'm like, with a smile like that, why not? I mean, that it's like a shark man coming at you right there. But it reminds me of those teeth. Remember that you wind up and you, yeah, that's what it reminds me of right there. But the world will look at a man like this and say, if I just do what he tells me to do, man, I will find meaning and purpose in life, because he is the life coach for all of those things. And I actually look at this guy and I look at Ecclesiastes and Solomon, and I think what Solomon is going to do with this guy today is throat punch him, all right? He is going to let us know that all of the ideas that we look toward in life to get meaning and purpose and fulfillment, if we just get more money, we just get the right person, just get the right job, we're going to be complete. The teacher is going to say, that may not be the case. And here's what's crazy about what we're going to learn from the teacher today. He's going to take us on a journey, and he's going to do it a little bit like a sophomore frat guy as a life coach, all right? He is totally this guy. And here's the thing about this idea of sophomore. This is a little bit of an etymology study. And so you may not realize that the word sophomore comes from 2 Greek words combined. So the first part, soph, is wise. The second part, more, is moron, all right? So if you have a sophomore, it means wise moron. If you've been a sophomore, you are a wise moron. When I became a sophomore, I became a wise moron. And frankly, Dana, I've never left being a wise moron, all right? So this is Solomon. He's going to be this guy that takes us on this journey, and at times you're going to see the wise, and at times you're going to see the moron. And it's going to all come out because this is what he's setting out to do. And he's doing this basically by taking us on this great meaning from life experiment. He wants us to wrestle through all the stuff of life and to try to understand it and what he journeyed through and what he learned from that. So to do this, he's going to start off by letting us know just how awesome he is. In fact, in verse 16, he said, I said to myself, look, I am wiser than any of the kings who have ruled in Jerusalem before me. I have great wisdom and knowledge that surpasses all of them. I want you to look at that for just a second, right? Look at that. I am wiser than all the other kings. I have greater wisdom, greater knowledge. He's just frankly telling us, man, I am the coolest guy I've ever met. Already you can see sophomore written all over it, right? Wise moron. But what's he going to do with all of this privilege that he has as the smartest, the coolest, the biggest, and the best guy who has ever lived? Well, he's going to take things for a spin. So in verse 17, he says, I set out to learn everything from wisdom to madness to folly. So here's the thing about this. He's going to literally try everything on the spectrum of life. So he's like, I'm going to party, and then I'm going to ponder, and I'm going to do everything in between, and I'm going to see if I can find purpose and meaning in life. Like, I'm going to drive this thing to the nth degree, and I'm going to see if this world, this life, and this existence can fill up my soul and give me a sense of just completeness for life. Now, we know that's his target, but at the beginning, he actually tells us what the outcome is going to be. He says it right there. He says, but I learned firsthand that pursuing all of this is like chasing the wind. And so I think about that and I go, man, so let me get this straight. You kick this whole thing off and you go, I'm going to try everything. And then you tell me at the get-go, and when I did it, it was fine, it was okay, but it didn't really last. Well, that's exactly what he's going to do. And so I love this about the teacher because he really is doing us a favor. He has the resources, the capability, and the power to do and try everything. Like we long, we dream, we wish, if I just had a little bit more money, if I just had a little bit more control, then my life would be complete. And he's like, listen, I've done all of this. I've tried all of this. And so let me now take you on that journey and take you through all the things I did and the things that I learned. So the first place he starts actually is with this. He says, I started off with an attempt to be smart, but that was dumb. It was dumb, right? And he tried with all of his might. In fact, he says this in verse 12. He says, I, the teacher, was king of Israel, and I lived in Jerusalem, and I devoted myself to search for understanding and to explore by wisdom everything being done under heaven. So he decides, I'm going to be a full road scholar, right? I'm going to be a Renaissance man. And so I'm going to invest myself into all the things you can learn. And so he studies anthropology and psychology and sociology and zoology, as you'll see in a couple of minutes. He just tries everything. He's like, I'm going to be a teacher and a philosopher and a theologian, an architect, a developer, a contractor, an entertainer. He says, I'm going to do it all because, again, I think the smarter I am, the better off I will be. So certainly he's thinking that advancement and kind of creation are going to give him meaning and purpose in life, right? That's what you would think he would say. Yes, I did it and I found it. But that's not exactly what he says. He says, I soon discovered that God has dealt a tragic existence to the human race. I observed everything going on under the sun, and really it is all meaningless, like chasing the wind. What is wrong cannot be made right. What is missing cannot be recovered. I mean, what a tragic reality for him to face this. It's like he's saying, you know what? I did things, and they were interesting. They were curious to me. They filled up the time. But what I really needed from those things, what I really sought, this idea of now I am complete in life, he says, that didn't change anything for me. I did things, and they were fine, but they didn't pay off. I didn't find meaning and purpose. In fact, he says, it was like chasing after wind. And I was thinking about this as a kid. I grew up in Arizona, and one of the things we had there was little tornadoes called dust devils, right? And we were dumb kids because we were all sophomores, wise morons. So we would see a dust devil out in the field, and we would run after it to chase a dust devil. Like, what are you going to do when you catch a small baby tornado anyway, right? So we would run after it, and you would jump into the middle of this dust devil, and all you would get is a face full of dirt, your eyes full of sand, and nothing to show for it, right? It's just like chasing the wind, trying to grab the ungrabbable. And so what he's saying is, I tried this idea of knowledge and enhancement with information, thinking that this would be the thing. And he says, it wasn't the thing. In fact, I think we could even go a step further, and it's this reality that the more we grow in knowledge, the more we in fact grow in grief. I mean, think about what we say. We say what? Ignorance is bliss. We all know this, right? But when you know something, when you're endowed with information, that's when you start to have burden and you have responsibility to the information you have. So for example, when we were kids, we were dumb, but we had fun. We were dumb and happy, right? We just rolled around with just an ignorant bliss in life. But then as we began to grow in knowledge and grow in information, man, that's where the weight really came in. Because here's the reality. The more you know, the more you then worry about the things that you know. And the more you know, the more you see the problems. And the more you know, you can see where things are going to go wrong. In fact, I laugh even with Pastor Scott. Some of you may not know that his degree is in photography, and he was a photographer for like 3 decades, right? And so he has tons of knowledge. You know what that means for Scott? It's grief. It's grief because every time he looks at a photo or watches a video, he sees the flaws, he sees the problems. The lighting could have been like this, the background could have been like that, the focus is off. And so knowledge is not freedom. Knowledge is constraint sometimes. Knowledge is grief. And so this is why the preacher here sees the problem in verse 18. He says, the greater my wisdom, the greater my grief. To increase knowledge only increases sorrow. It only increases the sorrow. And so he goes through this and he sees the problem and he just says, you know what? Life is more crooked than it is straight. And the more I know and the more I see, the more I'm burdened, more than I'm freed. And so for that first exploration, like I said, he said, I want to be smart, but boy, that was really dumb. So he says, okay, I'm gonna bag that enterprise for a while, and I'm gonna try another thing. And that is the second thing. He says, I decided to go and have fun. And that fell flat. In fact, he says it this way. He said, I said to myself, come, let us try pleasure. Let us look for the good things in life. And so where the previous one was like, I'm gonna be really intelligent, this time he's like, all right, I'm just going to take from the Bill and Ted playbook, all right? We're just going to party on, dudes. We're going to have a great time. We're going to do it all, right? So he's thinking like, if a little wine makes the heart happy, then a lot of wine must be awesome. And if having one wife that you can have sex with is great, I should get like 700 of those, all right? And 300 concubines. And so he goes full frat guy. So now he's on the moron side. Before he was on the wise side, now he's on the moron side and he's going crazy. So it's like beer bongs and spodies and spring break parties. Like he's just like, okay, I'm going to try this one out for a while. And a lot of people, that's how they get through life. They just kind of go like, that's the only real meaning. You work through the week to play on the weekend. I live for the play. And so he decides he's going to live for the play as well. And so he goes all in on just hedonistic living. And here's what he concludes. He says, but I found that this too was meaningless. So I said, laughter is silly. What good does it do to seek pleasure? Like he goes through all of this and just concludes like, I don't know what it's all worth. And it's certainly not what it's cracked up to be. I mean, laughter's great, but it doesn't sustain you. And I think he would say at times he had fun in all of the things that he did, even if they were destructive and reckless, he had fun, but they just weren't lasting. They weren't satisfying. And so he looks at all of this and says, you know what? I'm going to retire the beer pong table. I'm going to get rid of the frat house, and I'm going to live a sophisticated and responsible life. And so he ditches number 2, and he goes after the third thing. He says, I decided I would seek out success. He says, but that ultimately in the end was a failure. He says it this way, verse 3. After much thought, I decided to cheer myself with wine. While seeking wisdom, I also clutched at foolishness. This way, I tried to experience the only happiness most people find during their brief life in this world. So again, this is the sophistication phase. He's going to be respectable. He's going to be refined. He's going to be wise and productive instead of foolish and ignorant and just destructive in his lifestyle. But I want you to notice what it says here. We can go back to that for just a second, that previous one. He says, still seeking wisdom, I clutched at foolishness. Here's what he's capturing here. He's like, I'm going to try to do it in a way that is wise, but foolishly, I'm still doing this thinking that the right way of living is going to satisfy me. That's the foolish part that he's still trapped into there, right? I'm going to be wise, but foolishly, I think that wisdom is going to pay off better. That's the trap that he's going to be in. And so he begins to show how he began to build a life in a very creative way. He says, I tried to find meaning by building huge homes for myself and by planting beautiful vineyards. I made gardens and parks. I filled them with all sorts of fruit trees. I built reservoirs to collect the water, to irrigate my many flourishing groves. And so at this point, he goes hard Chip and JoJo Gaines, right? So he's like, I'm going to build cool stuff. I'm going to have amazing gardens, amazing orchards. I'm going to just make this incredible place that, frankly, if you start to really think about what he's doing here, he's trying to forge an artificial Eden, right? Eden was lost. We learned that in week 1. And when we lost Eden, we lost the sense of meaning and purpose in life. And so he's creating a fake Eden for himself. Maybe somewhere in that creation, he will find an artificial tree of life that gives him meaning and purpose in life. And so he begins to build all of these different things, but then he doesn't stop there. He says, I also bought slaves, both men and women, and others who were born into my household. So I had authority, he says. And I also owned large herds and flocks, more than any of the kings who had lived in Jerusalem before me, so he had security. And he says, and I collected great sums of silver and gold and treasure from many kings and many provinces, and so he had prosperity. And then we even see he had a thriving entertainment industry. In this next verse, he says, I hired wonderful singers, both men and women, and had many beautiful concubines. Like, you're not supposed to brag about that in the Bible, but he does. He says, I had everything a man could desire. Again, all the stuff the world longs for, all the stuff the world craves. He had everything. And I can't help but look at this guy right now. And he reminds me of like that 1960s Playboy mansion kind of posh guy, right? He's like, hello, gents and ladies. Like, he's just, I got everything. I'm doing everything. I'm experiencing everything. I'm invested and involved in everything. In fact, he says, I became greater than anyone who had lived in Jerusalem before me, and my wisdom, it never failed me. Anything I wanted, I would take. I denied myself no pleasure. I even found great pleasure in hard work, a reward for all of my labors. So again, what's he kind of boasting about? And you take this whole section that we've raced through. He's like, man, I've done it all. I've been an entrepreneur. I've been a developer. I've been a designer. I've had good wine. I've had good women. I've had wealth and fun and sex and knowledge and wisdom, ingenuity, design. I've learned, I've experienced, I've taught. He's done all of these different things, right? So whatever he wants to do, he does it. He's freed up, right? So his dream, he can make a reality every time he dreams something up. So he runs the ultimate experiment from wise to fool. He has every toy, goes on every trip, has every conceivable experience a person can have. You would think he would be so fulfilled, but look what he says in chapter 2, verse 11. He says, but as I looked at everything I had worked so hard to accomplish, it was all meaningless. It was empty. It was just incomplete. It was like chasing the wind. There was nothing really worthwhile anywhere. See, here's what I love about this. He, again, is just able to do what we all think if we could just do, we would be happier. On any front, it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter if the front is, again, wild partying, or it doesn't matter if the front is just philanthropic responsibility. He's like, all of those things I've tried. And while all of those things had some sense of connecting for a little bit or for a season, maybe for a moment, maybe had some filling, it just didn't hold. It didn't keep him going. It didn't sustain him for the deeper things of life. And so the question comes to, what was he going through? What was he wrestling with? And what is it that we all as human beings sort of wrestle with? Well, I was thinking about it this week, and it kind of takes us over to the blackboard here, but here's what he's struggling through. It is the difference between expectation and experience. Because there's a difference between those two things. And this one, boy, this drives us a lot in life. And this one, this idea of experiencing that which we have been expecting, well, sometimes the experience can let us down. And here's the difference between these two. Expectation is about what you want, right? Where experience is about what you have. More deeply, when it comes to the emotions of these two things, is that want, it grows. But what you have and the emotion of what you feel and what you have, tragically, it fades. And think about it. It's kind of like when you buy a new car. By the way, for the camera people, I will go back to that in a second, after all. But it's like when you buy a new car, you have this longing, this want, this desire. When you get it, it's going to be so great. And then you buy it and you drive it off the lot. And then you're realizing, like, wow, this thing's depreciating just driving it off the lot. And it was so cool, but then after a year, you realize, like, you're not really vacuuming it like you should. You're probably not taking care of it like you would like. And then in 5 years, what happens? You want a new car. Sometimes in 5 weeks, you want a new car, right? And so the want is more powerful than the have. The craving doesn't always lead to contentment. So when I think about this a little bit more, I realize that in life, a lot of times these expectations versus experiences have this weird effect. And so, for example, let's look at it like a trip, right? So we're going someplace and we start to get all of the expectation of the trip, and that expectation, it grows and it grows and it grows and it grows. And you're spending months expecting this, excited about this, everything else. And then you actually have the experience of the trip. And the trip, you excited for months and months and months, and the trip is 2 weeks, right? And then after the trip, you're like, oh, wow, that was awesome. It exceeded expectations. But if it exceeded expectations, then it would hold you for a long time far beyond. But that's not usually what happens. We take the trip, 2 weeks later, it's over. And then what are we doing within a couple of weeks? Oh, life is kind of boring. I want something to do. Oh, let's go on another trip. Trip would be awesome. We spend months and months and months and months, and then we go, and then 2 weeks, right? So the expectations are big, they grow, the experience is short, and then ultimately what you sense, all those emotions you feel from the experience, those emotions fade, right? So the warm, googly feelings that you had when you were on a trip with friends or doing some cool thing, it just really doesn't sustain. So again, we start to go into these cycles again. We're kind of down, and then we get these expectations again. And part of the expectation stuff is on the downtrend as much as it is on the uptrend, right? I expected that to really hold me longer, be better. So I got a new dream, a new wish, a new want, and it grows, right? But then when we have what we want, ultimately those feelings from it fades. And as I was thinking about this week, I realized that I think what Solomon gets into as a trap, and I think we do as well, is our assumption is to say, okay, Matt, I get it. Life is ups and downs. It's kind of peaks and valleys. But what we hope is that we have this trajectory that keeps taking us up, right? So the expectations may be a lot more and drive us a lot more, but we just keep building up experiences, right? That's going to take me on an upward trend. But I find often in life when we do it that way, it actually does the opposite. We actually start doing this. Because we expect these things to give us more than they give. We expect the experiences to be more giving, but in reality, the expectations oftentimes can drive us more and create more kind of emotional turmoil for us than, in fact, the experience can offer to us. That's sort of the challenge that I find, and I think that's the challenge that the teacher's in. He's like, man, I expected this, and I expected this, and I expected this, but then my experience, it didn't carry me as much as my expectation anticipated. And again, I think we all have experienced this at some point, right? Maybe we had an expectation that marriage would be a certain way, or being a parent would be a certain way, and then we had the reality of that. We experienced the expectation. We're like, wow, that didn't come out like I thought. That wasn't quite what I was anticipating, or a trip, or buying a thing, whatever it is, it doesn't matter what it is. That's just the trap of life, especially if our expectation is people, stuff, events, things will satisfy me, fulfill me, exceed the expectations. Again, I think rarely do things exceed expectations. So at this point, you're saying, okay, Matt, let's assume that then meaning from life is going to be a bit elusive. Is there at least one way of doing this a little bit better than the other, right? I mean, if he's tried folly and he's tried wisdom, is there something that at least kind of pays off a little bit better than the other? Well, that kind of leads into this next idea. Is there a lesser of two frustrations for life, right? And so this is a fair question, right? Because maybe life won't satisfy and fulfill like we want, but maybe perhaps at least we can get something from it. Here's where the teacher goes. He says in verse 12 of chapter 2, he says, I decided to compare wisdom with foolishness and madness, for who can do this better than I, the king? Again, very, very calm, very humble man, you can tell. So he thought to himself, wisdom is better than foolishness, just as light is better than darkness. For the wise can see where they are going, but fools, they walk in the dark. And so at least you can hear that and see that and go, okay, this is great, because finally he's at least making some sense, right? Wisdom is better than foolishness. It's like, good, that's good advice. That seems thoughtful. It seems rewarding. Maybe at least if I just pursue wisdom, I'm going to be satisfied. Well, here's what he says. He says, yet I saw that the wise and the foolish share the same fate. Both will die. Yay, us. So I said to myself, since I will end up the same as the fool, what is the value of all of my wisdom? This is all so meaningless. For the wise and the foolish both die. The wise will not be remembered any longer than the fool. In the days to come, both will be forgotten. And so he still distills this down to the fact that no matter what path you choose, still your end is exactly the same. And tragically, in our society, probably the fool will be remembered longer than the wise. I mean, just think about it for a second, right? We're probably more apt to be able to remember like who won the latest Oscar or Grammy or MVP award far quicker than we can be like, oh, I remember who won the Nobel or the Pulitzer, right? Or the Frank Prize. And right now you're thinking, what's the Frank Prize? Exactly, right? So this is the problem. We tend to remember the fool way more than we even remember the wise. Because of this, he says this, I came to hate all life because everything done under the sun is so troubling. Everything is meaningless, like chasing the wind. So here's why I think this is helpful for us to understand. He's got a pragmatic bent to him in this. And so what he's saying is, you know what? Wise living, it will give you a better quality of life. But wise living even won't give you meaning for life, right? That's what's so important here. You might pass the time a little bit better. You might even get more years on your life because you choose to be wise. But in the end, your time will still come and you will die. Just as the fool dies, the wise person dies. And they may die very discontent if they've banked their life on fulfillment, being caught up in being a wise person. Because this life can't fulfill. This is why he goes on to say, I came to hate all of my hard work here on earth, for I must leave it to others, everything I've earned. And who can tell whether my successors will be wise or foolish? Yet they will control everything that I have gained by my skill and hard work under the sun. How meaningless this is. Here's what's interesting about this to me. His son, who took over everything, was like a jackfruit. Like the guy just was problematic. And literally his father spent his whole life building a kingdom, rallying the troops, bringing together all of the tribes, and his son takes over and loses 10 of the tribes, most of the country, it just all falls apart. And so literally, Solomon tries to use his wisdom to build something, and his son loses everything he built. And there's a part of me that I look at this passage and I wonder if he's writing this while actually looking at his son going, oh, I already see it. Like I see where it's going. I'm getting ready to die. I'm going to leave it to this kid. He's going to louse this whole thing up. And so it makes him ask the question, like, what am I living for? What am I dying for? Why am I spending all of this time doing all of these things? Where is it going to go for me in the end? And so this is what he says in verse 20. He says, so I gave up in despair, questioning the value of all of my hard work in this world. Some people work wisely with knowledge and skill. Then they have to leave all of the fruit of their efforts to someone who hasn't worked for it. This too is meaningless. He says it is a great tragedy. He cannot fathom all of this in life. And so he says, man, I look at this and there's no true meaning in life. And then I also look and say there's no lasting reward in death if my focus is life under the sun. So it's sort of a tragic story. He says, so what do people get for this life, for all of their hard work and their anxiety? Their days of labor are filled with pain and grief, and even at night their minds cannot rest. It is all meaningless. I was looking at that this week, and I was thinking, man, I get where he's coming from. I mean, think about how much effort and energy and emotion we put in to career, to making money, to providing a home. I mean, in our own lives, we put all of this energy and effort into that. We raise our kids to make sure they're equipped and able to go get a career as well. We judge each other kind of on career, or at least it's our identity. So what are you? Well, I'm a pastor, or I'm an engineer, or I'm a person that drives heavy equipment, or whatever it is. Like there's all these things. We kind of identify in those things, and then we pour all sorts of time and energy into those things that we do. We lose sleep. We worry, we're burdened about the work we do in this world. Sometimes we sacrifice our health or sacrifice our family. And for what? For what? So we can work months and months and months to take these little teeny trips so we can build our expectations and then have these little finite experiences that don't carry us the long haul anyway. Like that is what he knows. That is what he senses. That is what he feels. And I can't help but look at this and think about our own culture like the American dream. And maybe what we have to sometimes do is take off the blinders and realize the American dream is just that. It's a dream. It's a dream that will always promise to give more than it delivers. If we just buy into the system, if we just totally believe the marketing, if we just kind of have this sense of relentless pursuit of the dream, we'll somehow catch a dream. Well, that's like catching a dust devil. It's like catching contentment through discontentment means. It will never pay off. It'll never happen. And so Solomon, he's just being honest with us. And I'm sure at this point right now you're like, Matt, okay, you've got me depressed. Do you mail me the Prozac to my house? Like, how do we go about this? Like, what am I going to do next, right? Well, here's the great thing about this. He has this aha moment for life. And this is the aha moment. After going through all of this grief and strife and everything else, he says this in the next verse. He says, so I decided, after all of this stuff, there is nothing better than to enjoy food and drink and to find satisfaction in work. Then I realized that these pleasures are from the hand of God, for who can eat or enjoy anything apart from him? Now, here's the thing about this little section. This idea occurs 5 times throughout Ecclesiastes. It's like these islands in this turbulent sea of the book. And every time we come to these, I'm going to kind of peel out different things that are important. But for this first occurrence of this, there's 3 things I want to notice in this passage that I think are really, really important for us to note. The first is this. If you look at it, matter of fact, even just, let's go back to that for a second. I want to point this out. You'll notice that he doesn't use words like meaning and purpose here. He uses enjoy and satisfaction, but he doesn't say meaning and purpose. In other words, here's what he's saying. When the good things in life come your way, it is totally cool to enjoy them. I don't want us to start thinking, oh, here's what Ecclesiastes and Matt is saying. If I have fun, if I go on a trip, if I buy a new car, whatever else, he's saying that's bad. No, what I'm saying is if you want it to give you meaning and purpose, you'll be disappointed. In fact, if you want it to give you meaning and purpose, you might be really discontent in the end, and you might find yourself chasing lesser things, wanting more in return, and it can't give you that. So what he comes to the conclusion of is, hey, if I don't try to get meaning and purpose in these things, I'm just simply satisfied when they come. I enjoy them when they're there, and as soon as it's done, I just move on again. I don't want the next bigger, best thing. That's totally great, right? And that's kind of his heart. And so the first thing is understanding, if you can just simply enjoy and be satisfied in things, you're fine. If you're like, no, that didn't satisfy, that wasn't as enjoyable, I need a bigger, better enjoyable, then we're chasing. This goes to what we learned on the board, the second element of this, which is adjusting our expectations. Because we all have expectations, and I think what Solomon is learning in his own life is to change his expectations. So if good things come, great. And when they pass, they're gone. Don't want them to be more than what they can provide for life, right? Because again, we don't want to grow our appetite of wanting at the cost of enjoying what we have. And that's the trap of life. That is what he identifies. But then the third thing in this little section that I think is so critical is that he says, you know what? Life is most enjoyable when God is central. In fact, he says this in verse 26. He says, God gives wisdom, knowledge, and joy to those who please him. See, there's something about this to me. And it seems, as I try to distill it down, is only God can bring the additive to the soul that we need to have a sense of fullness in life. And I think even Solomon's dad understood this as well. In Psalm 37, he says, trust in the Lord and do good. Then you will live safely in the land and you will prosper. Take delight in the Lord and he will give you your heart's desires. Now, I want to go back over to this and look at this for a second. He will give you your heart's desires. Does this mean everything that your heart craves, he will give you whatever you can come up with? No, that is not what David's saying. That's not what we should walk away with. What he's saying is the more you trust in the Lord and you do good, the more God will implant desires in you. And those desires will be healthy desires. They won't be wanting, craving lesser things desires, but there will be a sense of contentment and peace and a healthy stream of desires. Because here's the thing I have realized over the course of life. A post-Eden world cannot satisfy the soul. I'm going to say that again. A post-Eden world cannot satisfy the soul. The only thing that can satisfy the soul is the engineer and a creator of Eden that can set the spirit of Eden in the soul anew. He can plant and replenish in us what was lost in Eden. What was lost was the tree of life, and what is gained through God is new access to a new tree of life. And it's not simply a tree in a garden someplace, but rather the tree is Christ himself. When we think about the essence of life, this is why repeatedly in John's gospel, Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. He's repeatedly said to be life and life everlasting and life-giving, and God so loved that he gave so that we can have what? Eternal, abundant, complete, perfect life. He is the tree that was lost, and if we don't realize that life is only content with Christ, we will be forever discontent. And so the walk away, the close, when we leave Ecclesiastes and we go into the New Testament, is this simple principle and truth that life's meaning under the sun only comes when life is lived under the sun. In fact, in Colossians chapter 3, he says, since you have been raised to a new life with Christ, set your sight on the realities of heaven where Christ sits at the place of honor at God's right hand. Think about the things of heaven, not the things of earth. And then notice right here in verse 3, for you died to this life under the sun, this life where you want meaning and purpose, but you can't get it. You died to that in Christ. And your real life is hidden with Christ in God. And when Christ, who is your life, when he is appearing and revealed to the whole world, you will share in all of his glory. See, the bottom line is the only way, again, life is meaning and abundant and full is from the giver of life. And what Solomon learns is all the other stuff of this life, the good and the bad, the party and the pondering, the wisdom and the folly, all of it still ends the same way. It ends in sapping life and leading to death. But the New Testament and Jesus says, but there is a newness of life and a freedom when we seek to have God be the center of our life instead of stuff and experience and things. And just personally for me, going through Ecclesiastes this week, it was interesting because I was confronted by the fact that I have been looking down and around at life under the sun. And from that, I have been frustrated or worried or irritable or discouraged at times. There's these moments where I'm like, you gotta be kidding. Why are they doing this? Why is that happening? How is this going on? We're all crazy. And there's all these feelings, right? And then I'm reminded of Colossians that when I'm feeling all of that stuff and I'm looking at life under the sun of Solomon, I need to change my gaze and I need to look up to God's Son and assess this life through his lens, because this life isn't my life, but rather what Scripture says is that Christ, he is our life. Let's go ahead and pray together. Jesus, we are so easily deceived. We are so easily brought to life under the sun and looking around, wanting this life to somehow pay off, wanting this life to be fair, wanting this life to reward us. And then we find that sometimes it cheats us, and sometimes it doesn't pay off, and sometimes it doesn't give. In fact, oftentimes maybe it feels like it takes, and then we're frustrated that it feels that way. And I just realized that it's because we're not setting our vision on you, because you are our life. This life isn't our life. You are our life. And so may we trust that and trust you and run to you more and try to run to stuff, people, elements less. It is a hard task. I agree with the teacher. It is a hard lot in life. But when we realize that you are life beyond this life, and you can fill us in this life, and that life is better with you, Jesus, it's why we say it as a church all the time, life is better with you. It really is, in fact, true. You fulfill us, you sustain us, you give us what we need. And so we look to you, we love you, we thank you in your name. Amen. Well, this Sunday is Communion Sunday, and I think it's fitting that it's Communion Sunday because the essence of communion has a lot of different kind of elements and nooks and crannies to it, but the core of it is that it's a covenant of life, right? So we are under a covenant of death. We are under a law of death, and then Jesus comes and says, I've come to give you a new life, and I will die to give you that life. I will shed my blood to actually cleanse and change and renew you and bring you back into the Spirit of Eden, give you access again to the tree. And then one day in a new Jerusalem, in a new garden, there will be a new tree on each side of the river, and you will eat from that. And so we have this thing called communion, which is a feast of remembrance of what he's done, as we then long for what is to come again, and we will feast with him anew. And so I hope right now that you have your elements for communion, the cup and the bread. I have mine up here, and I think about where Jesus was in that final meal, and he's looking at his disciples, and he breaks bread and he passes it around, and he says, this bread is my body that is broken for you. Do this in remembrance of me. At the end of the meal, he takes a cup of wine, and he explains that this is this new agreement, not just simply a contract, but this sense of love and loyalty, of giving himself away so that we might be brought into life. As he says, this cup is my blood shed for you, bringing you into this relationship with my Father. Do this in remembrance of me. Jesus, we thank you for your sacrifice for us, for your love for us, and for giving us life in you. We thank you and praise you in your name. Amen.
Sing this little chorus. In the longing of our souls. In the longing of our souls, in the darkness where we go, you are there, you are love, you are all together good. In the weakness of our faith, in the silence where we wait, you are here, you're enough, you are all together good. I love you, Lord. I love you, Lord. You are my Lord. Holy, present, and pure, you are all together good. Amen. Amen. That concludes our time together. Thank you so much for joining. You are sent out there to be God's light, hope, and peace to the world around you. Check out that album from Citizens if you want to also. I don't get any royalties, I guess, from that, or shameless plug. But it's an album, just songs that really speak to me, and I think it would speak to you too. And we will see you here again next week. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye.